Hi and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 13 years and am the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. So wonderful Check Your Thread head, how are you doing? Have you had a good week since the Sewing Trends episode came out? I feel like this week zipped by at lightning speed. All of a sudden, here I am recording another podcast intro, ready to drop yet another episode. This week, I've been very slowly making myself a sweatshirt. I thought it would be a really speedy project and I'd have it completed quickly. But I haven't found very many opportunities to sew recently, so I'm taking an unintentionally slow sewing approach with this one, it would seem. Anyway, I'm using the Leona sweater pattern by Fibre Mood, having ogled a couple of fantastic versions made by a friend of the podcast, Naomi. I'm using some lovely French terry with a nautical stripe that I was given a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, by my sewing pal Lisa and her wonderful mum, Kathy. The Leona pattern has a really clever seam detail, and the stripe is really highlighting that in an interesting way. Sustainability-wise this week, well, that is also pretty sewing related. Before I started my sweatshirt project, I undertook a few mending projects, which had started to pile up. There was a puffy jacket that my son had grown out of, but it had a couple of little holes in the back. I don't know about you, but I feel a responsibility to help give garments as long a life as possible. So I took some time to patch up those little holes in a very similar fabric. So hopefully I can find it a new owner who will be happy to give it more wear. I also made an embarrassingly quick alteration by finally shortening a dress that I decided would be better as a top. I finally made that decision during Me Made May, and I took it out of my wardrobe to do so, but it's taken me this many months to actually do something that took literally 20 minutes tops. I truly believe that mending and altering garments is a really important act to keeping materials in use for as long as possible. But to be honest, I'm a bit rubbish at actually getting round to it. So in an attempt to keep on top of it a bit better, I'm implementing a new rule for myself. When I finish a from scratch project, I'm going to tackle at least one mend or alteration before I crack on with my next project. I think this is definitely doable, and I'm pleased that I've figured out a simple formula to follow. What about you? Do you find that items that need mending or altering tend to pile up in favour of new from-scratch sewing projects? Or are you the opposite? Do you delight in a quick win and pleasing mend? I would love to hear. This week, I want to say a massive thank you to Jamie and Bridget for signing up to support the podcast each month. Massive thanks to you both. I really appreciate it. I also want to say a huge thanks to listener Corinne, who chose not to support via Patreon, but instead to give financial support in the form of a donation. Enormous thanks to you, Corinne. If you also would like to be the wind beneath Check Your Thread's wings and are in a position to make small monthly donations, please sign up to the Patreon via patreon.com/checkyourthread. Right, on to today's episode. I'm very excited to be bringing you something slightly different with today's conversation. It's with someone that I mentioned on the podcast previously in episode 50 when I reported back from my trip to the Future Fabrics Expo earlier this year. If you've already heard that one, you might recall me speaking about some work that was looking into the potential of sunflowers as an alternative resource for fabric production. Well, today's conversation is with Jess Redgrave, the person who's undertaking that work. How cool is that? Jess does not come from a science background. In fact, she worked as a fashion designer for nearly a decade before quitting due to the waste and damage that she witnessed when she worked in the industry. Therefore, she is able to explain all about her fascinating endeavours in a way that non-sciencey people like myself can understand. I got to ask Jess loads of questions about all three facets of her work, which is fibre production, natural dyeing and waterproof coatings. So maybe someday we might be sewing with fabric that has in some form been derived from sunflowers. Want to listen? Of course you do! Enjoy! Well, hi Jess. I am so grateful for you to talk to me for Check Your Thread podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Slowly waking up.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little bit early. So to kick things off, could you please tell us who you are, where you are and what fills your days?
My name's Jess and currently I'm in London, well, where I'm from. And what fills my days? Well, I've just finished doing a master's, so I'm actually trying to work out what to do now. Ooh. So my days are quite busy, but with lots of different things.
Awesome.
Just seeing what's out there.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. I'll come back to that in a minute then. So I discovered your work when I visited the Future Fabrics Expo in London a few months ago. So I'm really excited to get into all of what you've been working on over the last, was it last year in your MA?
Yeah. Last 2
Last
years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but first I'd love to hear a bit more about your kind of backstory. So from what I understand, you used to be a designer?
Yeah, for 10 years.
Wow. So like thousands of people want to become fashion designers, don't they? So was it all you hoped for? Like how comes you decided to leave that?
Well, I think I just got a bit despondent with it. So I worked as a wovens designer for most of the high street for suppliers based out of India or based out of Turkey. And the beginning was really fun, sort of lots of traveling. But I sort of found myself conflicted with my love for nature. And then the later on I got in my career, the more apparent like the damage was that had been done, that was being done by the industry.
So what did you see that was making you feel uncomfortable?
I think it's just like the amount of clothing that goes through, and then when you know how much it takes to sort of grow a crop to make the fabric, or how much fossil fuels are being used in the plastic polyester world, and then just the amount that retailers would ask to see, yeah, it was just crazy. I was quite lucky with the suppliers that I worked with; they're very green focused,
right?
So I didn't see any of the horrors that I know are there.
Right. So in what way were they working in a more sustainable way than some others?
Well, I think the last job that I had the first circular factory, so they weren't wasting any water. The first green supplier, I think. But it's quite tricky because it's really hard to transition into being sustainable within the industry because there's so much infrastructure set up.
Yeah.
And they've been working this way for years and years. And there's so many people involved in the supply chain that just to make a change instantly, it won't happen overnight.
Yeah. The accountability is not there.
Yeah, exactly. And then you also have big retailers that don't want to take a cut of profit margins, which I think is the big problem as well. And even though I was working on sustainable collections, it felt like they were an additional collection rather than converting some of their existing collections.
So there was a kind of an element of greenwashing potentially, as in, look, we've got this range, but the rest of it's the same.
Yeah, and like some of the retailers are trying to do a good thing, but it can't just be a good thing on top of what you're doing.
Sure.
Yeah, so I felt a bit despondent with it. And in 2019, I quit after, I think it was like nearly 9 years.
Wow.
So I graduated in 2012 with my BA. And yeah, it was scary.
Yeah. So did you have anything lined up to go to, or just like, I can't do this anymore, let's figure it out?
No,
No.
I was kind of a bit like I'd heard of Material Futures. I think I'd seen.
So that's the MA that you did at Central St Martin's, yeah?
Yes, it is. So I'd seen, like, I think on some trend forecasting websites, sort of innovation that had come out of the school previously. So I kind of knew of it, but I thought I was just going to take some time out to work out what it is that I'm going to do, because when you're working, it's so difficult.
There's no time, is there?
Yeah, and I was traveling loads, so I was working in Turkey, so I was there for a couple of weeks, like every month, or well, maybe it wasn't that frequent towards the end, but we were busy a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to sort of take a step back and see what it is that you want to do with your life.
That was very bold, though. If you're living in London, you just decide to quit your job.
Yeah, luckily enough, I was in a position where I could do that. I'm very fortunate. But it was scary.
So Material Futures, that sounds amazing. So what does that course entail? And then so what made you decide to enroll?
I think it really excited me because it goes across different disciplinaries, design, science and tech. And I think it was a really exciting space where you could go and try different things that you would never normally be able to do.
Right, like what?
So I was really interested in getting into the lab and doing stuff that where else would you go and just be able to walk into the lab, especially with a fashion background. Like, hey, I'm a designer.
Like, you don't belong here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really good place. They teach you how to talk to people across industries. So I'm not a scientist now, but I have a better understanding. So now I can communicate with scientists, and you can.
That's so
they teach
cool.
you sort of how to collaborate cross industry, which is really exciting.
Amazing. That sounds amazing. So you just saw it, you heard about that, you thought there's an element of my background, but it's pushing forward into different avenues.
Yeah, exactly. So it was somewhere where I could not change my career, but be a designer in a different way.
Cool. So at what point did you discover the possibilities of sunflowers?
Well, we had a project to play around with materials, and I chose sunflowers because of how they can be grown within rotational crops. They're really good for the soil, really good for biodiversity. They actually remove pollutants from the soil, so they're excellent phytoremediators. So I was trying to work out if there's a way that you could grow a crop that would be good for the planet and also not take up any space from arable land that could be used for food crops, because there's that food fibre argument.
Right. Can you explain about that argument a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a shortage of arable land. So there's a shortage of land that's suitable for farming. And so there's an argument that unless you're feeding either humans or livestock, the land shouldn't be used for anything else.
Right.
So food's a necessity and should come first. But actually, if you start working in crop rotations, you can grow two together. So if you're using a waste stream from that cycle, or if you can companion crop with other food crops at the same time, then it stops that argument.
Yeah, because presumably sunflowers, they grow up, so you've got the space in between the stems.
Yeah, and they've been used, so they were used by indigenous groups for companion cropping, so you can grow them with
grow
beans.
Things up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're also great for the soil, so anything that goes in after.
The part of crop rotation.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, wow, this is a good place to start.
Have you grown any sunflowers yourself?
No, I don't have outside space.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, just London and my plants.
Yeah. You heard about sunflowers, you thought, let's give it a go. And so that's what you focused your studies on?
Yeah, so I started just before Christmas, started sort of like playing around with the things that you can do. Again, the Hopi people, they used to use the seeds for dyeing.
Right.
So it's not the oil crop, it's a different type of sunflower, but you can use the inner seeds to dye. You get shades of like deep purple, pink.
I saw some samples at the exhibition. Were those samples that you'd dyed yourself?
Yeah, they were.
So what different parts do the seeds can be used? Are there any other parts that can be used to dye?
Yeah, so I've used the petals and the leaves, but working on colour fastness for those at the moment, because like all natural dyes, it's quite difficult to keep the colour. When you first do it, you're like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah, like, why isn't everyone doing this? Wait, actually, it doesn't last.
So yeah, just working on the viability of that. But the seeds definitely are promising.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, and they're such a nice, rich purple, which is really nice. So yeah, I was just sort of playing around with those, and then I didn't really get into making the fibre or trying to make the fibre until February this year.
Right.
I haven't been working on it for that long because I was waiting to get enzymes to the lab. So I did a process of enzyme retting.
What's that?
So for traditional fibre crops such as hemp and flax, they go through a retting process.
Right.
And you can do dew retting, which is, I think, the preferable one now, where they leave the stems in the field and then there's organisms in the soil that break down different parts of the plant.
Right.
So you're left with the cellulose content, which is what you use to make the fibre, the fabrics. So enzyme retting actually speeds that up, and it doesn't rely on outside conditions. I know with climate change, everything's a bit more, you can't predict.
Sure. You don't want there to be like a load of rain and then suddenly everything rots, do you?
Yeah, rots too quickly. Or they have to be right conditions. So actually moving it into the lab, enzyme retting is supposed to be the most sustainable way to do it. You can recycle the enzymes after you've used them. So
where does one get enzymes?
Well, that's why I didn't start until February.
You're like, I don't know about this.
So actually worked with enzyme scientist Fiona, who's great, from Newcastle University, and she sent down some enzymes to work with and sort of like broke it down as to what enzymes I would need, what we needed to break down, and then
that's amazing. So you literally received some enzymes in the post?
Yeah, well, to the lab at uni, I wouldn't be able to receive them, but yeah.
What does it look like? Like what kind of package? I can't even imagine.
It's just a small vial of enzymes.
What is an enzyme then? Like, what does it come from? Is it nature-based?
So you have enzymes everywhere. You have enzymes in your stomach as well. They help break down things. So the enzymes I was using are derived from fungi and bacteria in the soil.
Oh, cool.
So basically, they've looked at how the retting process happens in real life, well, in the outside world, and then they've brought it into the lab. So in dew retting, it can take anywhere up to 5 weeks, whereas in the lab, I've managed to get the stems retted, well, the cellulose extracted in under a week.
Oh, wow.
So, so it speeds up the process, but also frees up the land, because with dew retting, you have to put the crops on the land. And if space is an issue, then leaving that, like taking that much space up just to ret the fabric isn't an option, or might not be an option in the future. So worked out how to do that. Had a lot of help from our lab technicians at university. Shem and Paula, who taught me science.
Props to them. So what does it look like at that point?
So once they finish retting, they're kind of like green stringy things, and then you have to go through a sort of mechanical combing, which you would do with other fibres as well.
Sure.
That process I'm working out. So within the lab, I've just been working small scale. Well, I was, before we finished being able to use the lab, I was trying to work out how to scale up to produce more, to make it commercial, essentially. But then you comb them, then you let them dry, and you have your fibres.
Cool. And then they get spun and woven, dyed, that kind of thing. Amazing. Okay, so there aren't currently any fibres actually being produced from sunflowers yet?
No, not yet.
How close do you think, what's the next step? How about that? How do we get from what you're at now to us being able to go and buy garments or fabric made from sunflowers?
I need money in a lab.
Money in a lab, okay.
So currently looking at accelerator schemes to apply for, so you can have access to all of those facilities, and people that are interested in collaborating, also looking for, there's a few things I need to work out with R&D to see sort of the size of the project, how big it could be. So looking at, for scientists to analyse different stem types. I hope to say in the next 12 to 18 months there'll be something. I don't know about if everyone could buy it, but it should be a lot further on and know more.
So we need money, we need a lab. If anyone's got money in a lab, get in touch.
Exactly.
Cool. Because of course there's different varieties of sunflowers as well, isn't there?
I think over 50 different species of sunflower.
Woo! I mean, I've grown 2. I was pretty pleased with myself. I was in Italy in August, and I was on the train, and I could see some fields that were just fields of sunflowers, but like not very tall ones. I was like, I wonder what those are being used for.
There's so many different types.
That's awesome. So what about the byproduct of the sunflower oil that you are investigating for the coating of fabrics? Can you tell us about that?
So I have made a water-resistant coating. It holds a water drop on hemp for over an hour and a half, also on cotton without absorption.
Cool.
Also working out how to scale that, putting it through different testing, which again need a lab and money for.
Okay, so how did that begin? Like, how did this part of the project begin?
So I started doing it by using traditional waxing techniques. So instead of using beeswax, I used sunflower wax. But that I found when you used it gave quite a heavy coating. It was nice.
Right.
If you dyed the fabric underneath, it would crack a bit. You would see it would get quite faded and you'd see colour. And it's fine if that's the look that you want. I think like heavily waxed garments look great if that's the aesthetic that you want. But I wanted something that was a bit cleaner. So with the technique that developed in the lab, you can coat it, so you can spray coat it on. The difference between a coated and uncoated fabric feels the same. Well, almost the same.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just working out how long it lasts for, like with abrasion and stuff. if it rubs it
Sure.
off.
Yeah, or maybe that's something that then you could send back to the manufacturers or something, get it recoated and they send it back to you or something. Yeah. Oh, so that's amazing. So it doesn't actually feel in any way different.
No, and it maintains
to the naked eye.
You might be able to feel a slight difference, but it doesn't alter the drape, which the heavy waxing does.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And
like, how do you even get hold of sunflower oil byproduct?
On Google.
Who knew? All this time I could have been investigating this.
But yeah, just lots of researching wormholes. But yeah, it maintains the breathability of the fibre as well,
so this could have all sorts of sportswear applications potentially as well.
Potentially. We'll see. But yeah,
I'm not going to say this for sure.
Yeah, not committing now.
So what do you picture the kind of ultimate end use to be?
So for my show, I mocked up a summer raincoat, as to what it could look like. Because in the summer, when you have a downpour and you have to put on a rain mac, it's hot and sweaty. So if you could use natural fibres for it and still have a bit of a water-resistant coating, then...
And ultimately, the whole thing would be biodegradable at the end of its life, theoretically.
Exactly. Or if you're using fabric such as hemp, it would probably last your lifetime.
Wow.
And you could just reapply coating, so...
That is so exciting. Is that the yellow garment that I saw on your website?
Yes.
That looks so good. I'm going to put a picture of that in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, and looking forward, I think it's just working out how to scale it up. I think that is definitely the next steps.
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so you've got the 3 facets of your work. Is that what forms the concept of climber fibre?
Yes, it is. Climber fibre was initially developed because I wanted climate mitigating fibres or coatings or dyes that were good for the planet and great for biodiversity. So sunflowers is the first step. We'll see if I get into anything else after.
Yeah. That's so cool. So also the fibre, are we predicting that it's going to have a similar handle to, say, like Tencel or viscose, something like that?
So under the microscope, the fibres look exactly the same as nettle fibres.
Right.
I think the process that I've used is a lot finer than hemp.
Right.
And flax. So they're really strong, but also quite tough. So unless they go through a cottonization process, which I think might be similar to what I've done.
So what is a cottonization process?
So that breaks down, you can actually use oilseed, flax and hemp, and then they go through a biological process and break it down so it feels more like cotton.
Okay.
So the fibres I have now are quite fine, but still I've been sort of scaling up. So they've been resting for a bit and they're ready to spin now. So I'll see what the actual hand feel of it will be.
Yeah, well, that's exciting.
We have like a tiny little swatch, but
we're like, I think this could be good for a blouse. Amazing. Okay, so out of those 3 facets then, so the fibre, the coating and the dye, which is the element that you're most excited about?
I think the fibre, because it was the other 2 sort of came naturally with it. It was like, what else can you do with the sunflower? But the fibre was the thing I started with, and actually the thing that gave me probably the most anxiety about the course. It didn't work until 2 weeks before the show. So working with sort of biological systems, there's so many unknowns. Sometimes things didn't grow. And
I mean, it could have just not worked as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, there was
possibly.
There was a chance.
You're like, maybe this is why people have not done this before.
Yeah, exactly. And 2 weeks before the show, you're like, come on, just grow. While you're waiting for the bacteria to grow to work with. Also, that I had the issue with sourcing the sunflowers because they were an out-season crop whilst I was working with it because of the time frame of university. So different plants had different things. So the last ones that I did, it was almost like someone had dyed the stems green. I couldn't control the growth, so there were so many variables I was working with which changed the timing slightly with each different enzyme that I used. So definitely, if they work, I think I'm most excited to see that as a fabric.
This does sound very stressful now you're talking about this.
Yeah. But really fun at the same time. Love doing it.
Yeah. So what other sources of fibre do you think there might be out there that people have yet to discover the potential of?
I think anything that preserves or restores vital ecosystems are really important. So I think there's dyes that come from the mangrove trees, the fruit of mangrove. I think it's in Indonesia, and they collect the fruits and they can make dyes out of the fallen fruits.
Oh,
so
cool.
It generates an income for the mangroves without them being cut down. So anything that is like that, or peatlands within the UK. So if there's any fibre that you could use without damaging the ecosystem or as a byproduct and actually helps restore those ecosystems, then I think they're really important to look at as a fibre source. Also, I think the waste market is an excellent place for both.
What do you mean by that?
So agricultural waste. There's so much residue that's created from different agricultures that if you can tap into those feedstocks and use them as a source, then you're not using raw materials. So that's a good way to go.
Yeah. So like, for example, at the Future Fibres Expo, there was a lot of fibres being produced from pineapple plant or banana plant. I don't know what the word is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Very cool. Okay. So how did you get involved in the Future Fabrics Expo?
So that came about from the final degree show. Just got asked to send some.
That must have been really fun, no?
Yeah, it was really fun because I'd been previously with work, and so it was quite nice, sort of a bit of a full circle to go back.
Yeah, like check me out in the inspo section.
Yeah, exactly. Such a great opportunity.
Were some of your other course mates also showing their stuff there? Because there was quite a lot of different stuff there.
Yeah. There were two from my course. So Jess, who has done fungal pigment for makeup. And then my friend Charlotte, she's made a machine for bacteria dyes. It's like a process where you can scale up and print. Very amazing. I mean, everyone on the course has done something, so many great ideas. So you can go and check it out we have an online showcase.
Okay, cool. I will link to that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So how does sustainability impact your own wardrobe then? So how do you source your clothing? Do you have any like rules or criteria that your clothing has to fit if it's allowed in your wardrobe?
I could definitely do better.
What do you mean by better? What's your definition for that?
Okay, so I try and shop secondhand or go to charity shops where I live. There's loads here, which is great. But sometimes when you're dressing for an occasion and you need something within a short time frame, you do go to the high street. But I think the rules that I have when I go to the high street is if I buy something, I want something that will last for a long time. So look at how it's made, and I think you sort of know a reputation of the store as well, that if you wash it once, it's not going to fall apart. And then it just has to feel nice as well. So I go for natural fibres, which don't always mean that they're sustainable, but I know that I'll wear them for a longer period. And wearing clothes that you buy from the high street, the more times you wear it, the more you reduce your carbon footprint. So if you do buy from the high street, wear it a lot.
Yeah. Okay, well, Jess, this has been so interesting. I can't wait to follow along. Please give us some updates. Let us know when you get that investment and what direction it takes you in.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!